I've used my programming knowledge to build a small but working calculator. It asks for two numbers that I save into two different variables, A and B. I want to calculate the sum of these two numbers and then print that back. But there are a couple of problems here that we are going to solve. And in programming, we usually call these types of problems or errors bugs in the code or in the program. But there are three different types of errors or bugs. We divide these up into syntax errors, execution errors, and logic errors. And we have examples of all three in this code. First off, if we try to run this program, it won't even start. We just get an error message. And this is a syntax error or a language error, meaning we've violated the rules of the language, the grammar of the language. And this is often due to forgetting a parenthesis or a quotation mark somewhere, or perhaps misspelled a function or a variable name. And in this case, we're missing a right parenthesis. There's a left parenthesis here, but there's no corresponding right parenthesis. And this seems trivial, but Python doesn't understand what it should do at this point. And this is an example of a syntax error or a language error. If we save and try to run this program now, it actually starts and it asks me for two different numbers. But this program doesn't finish. We can see that it crashes and it gives me an error message. And the trick here is to read these error messages from the bottom up. So if we look at the last line, this is generally a description of what went wrong. What it's saying here is I've tried to multiply two strings and it doesn't know what that means. And above this line, it shows me the line of code that it tried to execute when this error occurred. And this is the third line of code in my program. And if I didn't know that, I can also see on the line above exactly what file and what line this code appears in. This doesn't necessarily mean that the error is on this line, but this is a line where Python feels it cannot continue running. And if we go back to the code, once again the problem arises because we're trying to multiply A and B and they are strings, but the error isn't on this line. If we haven't said anything, what comes back from input is going to be a string, but we want these to be numbers so that we can perform these calculations. So we have to explain to Python that these inputs should be converted into integers, so numbers. So now A and B are going to be numbers that can be multiplied and we can get a result in the end. So we've fixed the crash on line 3 by editing lines 1 and 2. We can try running this program yet again. And the program finishes. It ends up saying that A plus B equals 10. But that's not actually correct, is it? A plus B is actually 7. And this is an example of a logic error where we followed all the rules of the language, so the program actually starts, and nothing crashes, so the program finishes as it should, but it doesn't produce the results we actually wanted. So Python understands what we've said, we just didn't say what we actually meant. And a common source for these errors is using the wrong variable, or, as in this case, writing a multiplication sign instead of an addition sign. So this change fixes that final bug. And if we run this a third time, we see that this program starts, it runs without crashes, and it gives me the correct result.